Welcome, everybody, to this week's podcast episode for the Financial Freedom Podcast. And I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And as you know, I talk about 4 different types of freedom: time, financial, location, health. And in that light, I'm always bringing guests on to talk about entrepreneurship, marketing, influencer, creator, and owning your own freedom. So today we have Blaire Brown, and she's a marketing expert and entrepreneur enthusiast. So she helps entrepreneurs launch their businesses. She's also a podcast host of the Curate Your Success podcast. And so today's talk is going to be all about marketing, branding, starting your business, growing. So I'm happy to have her on the show. So Blaire, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, I know we connected through Podmatch, which is it's kind of like the Airbnb for podcasting.
Love Podmatch.
So tell us more about yourself, your business, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, you were pretty accurate with I'm obsessed with all things entrepreneurship and starting businesses. So essentially, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been running my own business since I was 16 years old, and then wove my life in and out between entrepreneurship and the corporate world and fashion in New York City. And then a few years ago, I was finally just like, you know what? I'm all in. I'm going to just do this. And so now I help other people launch their businesses, but I also have a marketing agency too. So for the established businesses that need a little TLC on their aesthetic, or they just really understand that marketing is where they need to go at that point in time, I help them shine it up and attract the right clients. So that way they can start making money.
Yeah. I love this idea where, you go from this kind of like your side hustle down to your main, you just like take the leap and you go all in and you focus. And, I love seeing that. So we'll go straight into it. We have a couple ideas is starting a businesses. And so we'll just go kind of personal. What was it like resigning from your full-time job without your business being built yet?
Oh, it was scary, but for me, to be honest, it was scarier to stay where I was because to be honest, it was a picture perfect job. Like I worked in fashion for like a bunch of different brands that I loved. I'm a woman. I got free shoes. Who doesn't love that? But at the end of the day, I would sit at this desk with all these awesome things. And I thought, not that I wasn't grateful or anything, but I thought, if I'm not thrilled about this now, what's going to happen to me if I wait another 40 plus years to retire or whatever? And then I'm still in the same position. There's something off, right? And I think a lot of people that are called to be entrepreneurs, they probably can relate to this, where they just hear that voice over and over again, where it's like, you should try this business venture. You should try this. Like maybe the side hustle could be something more. Maybe you just listen to it. And then at some point, if you listen to it enough and you take the leap, is it going to work out? So of course it was scary, but I was very calculated about it. I thought, okay, well, what's the worst case scenario here? If I leave the job and then I fall on my face or something, what's going to happen? Is it really going to be that bad? I could always bartend or do something like that just to make it work. And that's actually what I did, is I was bartending in between. So that way, because you can leave bartending at the door, right? Or any restaurant job mostly. And then I could focus on my business full time after that and just make it work. And so that's essentially what I did. But then of course the pandemic hit like right as I started. But again, it all worked out because it gave me that time to be pulled from my normal life and all the other distractions that I had at that time, and instead focus on building the empire that we're building over here. So,
Yeah, it's amazing. Because I took the leap, leaving my full-time career in 2008, right when the real estate crash was happening. And
the timing.
Yeah. And I think these days, like, especially like COVID, you never know what you're going to get. So you got to just go for it, go for your dreams. Nobody's stopping you. So
100%. I love that. I love that attitude, because I think a lot of people get too scared and then they just never do it. But if you're somebody who does have that drive and you're like, whatever, I'll do anything. I'll wait tables, or you just make it work. I feel like once you have that inner drive, then you really have to listen to it and, just think, what is the worst case? You'll probably survive it. Just do it.
Yeah. So, we'll talk about, one thing is with go into, are there any specific steps you recommend entrepreneurs take to expedite their growth, marketing, social media, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, if you are just teetering on the idea and you're like, I'm not sure, I say just become official, like create an LLC or whatever, sole proprietorship, whichever direction makes sense for you. Just become official with wherever you're living so that it puts you in a completely different mindset. You're going to start treating it like a business. You're going to actually start thinking about it more seriously, and then maybe start telling people about it and hold yourself accountable, because it's a lot of work. So if it's official, it kind of speeds things up for you a little bit. It's like a mental game almost. The second thing is just to set up a nice branding presence. Do market research, find out who your ideal customer is, and then set up your brand to talk to them. And so the best way to do market research really is just to hop on calls with people, hit record on that computer of yours, and then use their language. Take phrases that they're using of the pain points that they're experiencing that you can solve. Put that in your marketing. All those things are really going to speed up getting clients, and it'll make you look good too if you have a nice professional presence versus just throwing some spaghetti on the wall and hoping it sticks. Be calculated about it, think about it, and that will definitely speed things along.
Yeah. And those are all great. And a lot of people listening, they're entrepreneurs, they're interested in kind of quitting their 9 to 5 or full-time, taking the leap. Are there any sort of especially taking the leap, and are there any hacks to starting a business, or what are your thoughts around tips for those individuals?
Yeah, I think, a big thing is just surround yourself with other entrepreneurs as well. And, tune into podcasts like this, because if you are surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded in a positive way, and they understand your level of like going for it, that's not normal. Like, not everybody is going to be like, wow, yeah, entrepreneurship, go for it. Because it is, a little counterintuitive for most people. So I think, you're laughing, but you had to have experienced that, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
100%, you've got to surround yourself with those people, because whenever you have those hiccups and curveballs, because they 1,000% are going to happen, you want to make sure that you have people around you that are supportive and like cheering you on, because otherwise it's really hard to push forward. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is like community. Surround yourself with a community of entrepreneurs. And if you don't happen to have a series of entrepreneur friends in your back pocket, go into Facebook groups, listen to positive things on podcasts.
Yeah, it's so interesting because like 14, 15 years ago, people called me, crazy, and now these days it's like it's just so it's accepted that people are gonna change jobs, they're gonna quit their careers, they're gonna go after their dreams. One thing is when you talk about brand visibility, besides social media, the market research, are there any specific like tips and pointers for individuals starting their brand or growing their brand, how to increase their visibility?
Yeah, I think referrals is a big thing. Reach out to the people you already know, let them know what you're doing, and share it with them, like stand on a rooftop or something. But because once they know, then that word of mouth trickles, and then you'll get a little bit more visibility in that way, because you'll be at top of mind of people that know you and love you and respect what you're doing. So I think that's a really critical piece, is referrals and letting people know. Because a lot of times, oddly enough, it sounds crazy, but entrepreneurs will just be in their little cave, right? They're so focused. They're like, oh, I'm building this, but they're not telling anybody. It's like, come on, y'all. Tell people about it, get the word out there. But from an aesthetics point of view, make sure your website looks professional. So that way, if somebody does land there, they stick around for longer than like 2 seconds. You want to capture their attention if it's like outside of social media. Doing something like being a guest on podcasts or pitching quotes to editors. There's different resources online where you could do that for free. And it just gets you in front of a different audience, and it positions you as a expert in your field. So look for those opportunities and pitch yourself where it makes sense. And I would say those are the best things. And then on a technical side of things, for marketing, I would say search engine optimization. So SEO is another great thing, because if your business is on the second page of Google or farther down, nobody's going to find you that way. So try to have an SEO strategy in some way, shape, or form, and then get on that first page when people search whatever industry you're in.
Yeah, there's so many new ways, and I love like just like you can go. There's so many. The playing field has been leveled, and so people can get started very quickly. And there's just so many tools and resources, and like you said, just get started. And another thing is as the audience when they're growing their business, they launched it, it's doing well, it's growing, and then usually they have to pivot because it's gonna
Oh yeah.
so how does someone evolve their business without confusing their audiences and their following?
That is a great question. Without confusing them, I think just take a step back at your brand and evaluate, okay, what pivot am I going to be doing, right? Really come up with a good plan and look across every touch point that your business has, like your website, your social media presence, if you have a podcast or wherever you're constantly communicating to your audience or your email list even. Look at all of them together, like put them on a board or something, a hypothetical board here, and then see, okay, if I were a stranger landing on any of these platforms, does it make sense what I do? If they only go to one and then they hit another and then another, is it cohesive in my storytelling? Because if it's not, you got a little bit of a problem. So you need to go tweak, make sure that is consistent across the board. So whenever you do make those pivots, just make sure it's kind of swift and all cohesive versus kind of being Frankenstein.
Yeah. It's quite interesting because I started, the podcast was mainly physicians and talking to physicians. And eventually I realized, there's other things and, you can incorporate different ideas and talk to people outside the industry and kind of, build upon that. As we're coming to the end of it, one thing is, people are interested in entrepreneurship, but do you think, everyone should become an entrepreneur, or are entrepreneurs born or made? Tell us more.
Yeah. So, I mean, I might be a little biased. I think everybody should, but actually that's not the real question, real answer here. Entrepreneurship is not for everybody. It is a lot of work, but I really think if you're somebody like, and you listen to me saying, oh, you hear that voice about starting a business and I keep hearing it, but I don't know, I'm kind of scared. I feel like that's the person who should go into it because they already have that desire. It's not going away. I truly believe there's a reason for that. So for me, that's where they are pretty much born if you are feeling that way and resonating with that. But there are some that are made at the same time. So I think there's both. Like there's people who do have that innate drive to go for it. And then they finally do one day. And then there's other ones that maybe they're surrounded by people that are going after it. And again, this goes back to community. You really are who you hang out with. So if you're surrounding yourself by people who also are just excited about taking chances and exploring a lifestyle that other people might be dreaming of, but you're actually doing something about it, I think some of those people are made. So I think it goes both ways.
What about the idea that is entrepreneurship risky? I'm curious there's always this idea of risk.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I feel like for me personally, I find it riskier not trying because I'm somebody who's like 6 months from now, 16 years from now, I don't want to be sitting and thinking, what if, right? And if you really have that in you and I don't know, I feel for me, it's riskier not to, and then to kind of feel like you're, for me personally, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored with this lifestyle that I've built. And then I was like, I got to shake things up and change it. And so I just did it. And best decision of my life. It has been, challenging to go through the growth stages, of course, as anyone would, of learning what you should do, what you shouldn't do, because it's constant learning. And entrepreneurship is very humbling. So once you think you know a lot and everything, then you meet somebody who knows more and you're like, oh man, I really thought I knew all that. And then you're like, well, I guess I'm just going to learn from them too. And then you just kind of evolve and it becomes really fun and exciting because they're in the same place too. And they're like, oh yeah, I was there too, like 6 months ago. Entrepreneurship is wild that you can look at, a calendar or something. You'd be like, the amount of information that I know 3 months ago versus 6 months ago. Now, like you just can compare these timelines of how much you grow because you're constantly moving forward to build your business.
Yeah. What I love talking to entrepreneurs, the excitement and how can people reach out to you, follow you and connect with you?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm basically everywhere on social media since I'm marketing. So you can find me on Instagram at Business by Blaire Brown. You can also follow my podcast, which is the Curate Your Success podcast, to tune into other entrepreneurship stories and tips for your business. So those are the best ways. And then my website is just my name. It's blairebrown.com. So if you're looking for any marketing or entrepreneurship guidance, let me know.
Yeah, definitely. And for all the listeners out there, it's a great episode. Blaire dropped so many gems about, taking the leap and, different things about marketing, branding. And be sure to check her out. She's also on YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and as well as her website. And be sure to connect with her as well as check out her success podcast. And with that, thanks for coming on to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.